So Chapter 2, Lesson 8 is solve percent problems. First thing I asked you to do is write down the definitions of the highlighted vocabulary. So here, a proportion is an equation that shows that two ratios are equivalent. Now remember, ratios can be written as fractions. So what this is saying is that two fractions are equal. That's what a proportion is. In a percent proportion, one of the ratios compares part to the whole. Compares a part to the whole. So Kara is on her school basketball team. She has completed 9 out of 12 free throw shots successfully. We want to write the ratio as a percent and as a fraction in simplest form. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our ratio. So it's 9 out of 12. So 9 out of 12, we can write that as a fraction, 9 over 12. Very good. Now, I want to write this as a fraction. Okay, there's a fraction, but I can simplify that, right? So I can divide by 3. Very good. So we're going to divide by 3 in the numerator, and we're going to divide by 3 in the denominator. So that gives me 3/4. Very good. Now, in order to change this to a percent, we want per 100, right? So the denominator we want to be 100. So what can I do with this 4? Very good. We can multiply by 25. So we'll do that in the numerator and in the denominator. So when we multiply that, that gives us 75 over 100, which is equal to, very good, 75%. So here are the two answers. We want the ratio as a fraction in simplest form. So there's our first answer. And then as a percent, and there's our second answer. So now we're going to use number lines to find the whole. We're going to use number lines to find the whole. Now you don't have to write this paragraph. It says if you know the part and the percent, you can find the whole or the total. Okay? You have used bar diagrams to solve percent problems, and now we're going to use double number lines to illustrate percents. So here we want, for example 1, we want to know 10 is 25% of what number? So here we're going to use these double number lines. So here we know that 10 is 25%, right? The of what number, that tells me what the whole is, right? So if we're talking about the whole, we're talking about 100%, right? All right. So here we're going to use the double number lines to model 25% and 10. So it says here that 10 is 25%. So those are equal, right? So on the number line, they're going to line up with each other. Does everybody see that? So the 10 and the 25, they're lined up together. Okay? So here, we have to fill in the rest of the number line. Well, if we're counting by 25s, then we have 25, 50, then 75, then 100%. Does everybody see how we filled in the number line for the percents? Down here, if we're counting from 0 to 10, of course, we're going to count by tens. So this is going to be 10 plus 10, which is 20, and plus another 10, which is 30, plus another 10, which is 40. Is everybody with me? So now we want to know what the whole is. And if we're looking at the whole, that is 100%. So if I'm looking at 100%, there's my 100%. What's my whole? 40. So the number 40 is at the 100% mark. So 10 is 25% of 40. So example 2 is the same kind of problem, but let's see here. It says country music makes up 75% of Landon's music library. If he has downloaded 90 country music songs, how many songs does Landon have total in his music library, right? So we want to know what his 100% is. But we do know that 75% of his songs are country music songs. Okay? So 75 is equal to the 90. So 75 is 90. So does everybody see that the 75 and the 90 line up? So here we're at 75. So 75, one more, if I add 25, that's going to get me to 100, right? So that means we're counting by 25s. So here we've got 0, 25, 50, 75, and 100. Is everybody clear with that? Now, how do I figure out what I'm going to count by in the number part of the number line? So here we have 90, okay? Now, if we're looking at 90, and how many pieces do we have? We have 1, 2, 3 points where I have to put a number, right? So 90, if I take 90 and I divide that by 3, what am I going to get? I'm going to get 30, right? 90 divided by 3 is 30. So here, that means that we're going to count by 30s to get to 90. So 0, 30, 60, 90, and another 30 is 120. So here, this tells me that the 100%, or how many total songs that Landon has in his on his music library, is 120 songs total. All right, so here we have 30 is 50% of what number? Okay, so 30 is 50%, right? So that tells me that my 30 and my 50% have to line up. So here's the 30, and there's the 50, okay? So what are we counting by in the percent number line? We're counting by, because that's right in the middle, right? We've got 2 more here, so between 0 and 50 is 25. So we're counting by 25s, okay? So you could be counting by 20s, you could count by 10s. It just depends on what the numbers are given, okay? So we know that 50 and 30 are lining up, and now we need to figure out what numbers go down here. Now, the first number, of course, is going to be 0, right? So what number is right in between 0 and 30? 15, right? And also 30 divided by 1, 2. 30 divided by 2 is 15. So that tells us what we're going to count by. Is everybody with me? So 0, 15, 30, 45, and 60. Very good. Very good. Does everybody see how we figured out how we were counting by? I mean, what we were counting by. So now we want to find what the whole is. We want to know what is the of what number. That, again, is the whole. And, of course, the whole, if I'm talking about the whole thing, I'm talking about 100%, right? So 100% is going to be, matches up to what? Matches up to 60. So 30 is 50% of 60. So 60 is 20% of what number? And once again, we're trying to find the whole, or the 100%. So it says in the question, 60 is 20%. So the 60 and the 20% are going to line up, right? So there's my 60, and there's my 20%. Now, we know we're going to count by 20s because that number is 0, the next number is 20. Is everybody with me? So 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 for the percent number line. Now, what am I counting by down here on the number line? Very good. Because this is 0, and from 0 to 60, that's just one hop, right? So from the next hop, we're going to get 120. And then we're going to have 180. And then we'll have 240. And then finally we have 300. Very good. So now we want to see what the 100% lines up with. So the 100% lines up with 300. So 60 is 20% of 300. So here, the 100% lines up with 500. So 300 is 60% of 500. Very good. Another way to solve percent problems is to use the percent proportion. We want to use the percent proportion. Now here, the percent proportion, you guys, I like to do it the other way around. I like to say, and I want you to write this down, percent over 100 is equal to the part over the whole. So we have part over the whole. So the diagram here uses the percent proportion to show that 75% of 32 is 24. Now when you look at this, the 32, see where it says of 32? The 32 is the whole. So bear with me. And the 24 is the part. And of course, the 75% is the one that has a percent sign on it. That's the percent. So this diagram tells us that the part, if I look at it in the question, you see where it says 15 is 30% of what number? The part is the is number. Okay? Make sure you write this down. And the whole is the of number. So here, when we set up our proportion here, it says 15 is. That 15 is, you see that 15 is the is number. That 15 is the part. So that's going to go in the numerator. Is everyone with me? The 30%, of course, that's the percent because it has a percent sign on it, right? So that is the goes over 100. So that's going to be 30 over 100. And the of what number, that's what we're solving for. So the of is the whole. We're solving for the 100, the whole thing. Does that make sense? So here, if I have 15 over my blank spot right there, equals 30 over 100. That's how we set up our proportion. Now remember, in the warm-up, we said that a proportion is two ratios or two fractions that are set equal to each other. So these ratios or these fractions are equal. We just have to figure out what goes down there in that gray box, right? So if I want to know, how do I get from 30 to 15? We're going to divide by 2. So if I divide by 2 up in the numerator, what do you think I have to do down here in the denominator? We're going to also divide by 2. So 100 divided by 2 gives me 50. So 15 is 30% of 50. So now I'm going to show you a little bit of cross multiplication. Okay? Now, this is very new. This is not in your textbook, so you need to make sure you write this down 100%. So we want to know 225 is 75% of what number? So we're going to use our percent proportion. Remember, the is number is the part, and the of number is the whole. Okay? Now, from our question, 225 is 75% of what number? So we could start with the percent. That's an easy one because it's the one that has a symbol, right? So that's 75%. So 75% we write over 100. So we've got 75 over 100. So now we want to look for the is number and the of number. You see where it says is right there? So 225 is, that's the is number, 225. And of course 225 is, that is the part, right? So the part goes in the numerator. So that's 225. And of course the of number goes in, the of number, which is the whole, goes in the denominator. So we are going to solve for the whole. And we're just going to call that x. Okay. So we're going to use cross multiplication to solve for that x. Okay. So this is a little bit of intro to algebra. Okay. Now, when you cross multiply, of course, cross multiply, the results are cross products. Because when you multiply, the answer is a product. So when you cross multiply, the results are cross products. So we want to find what our cross products are. So we're going to cross multiply. So on one side, we're going to multiply 225 times 100. So that's 225, and I don't want to use the x for multiplying because I have an x right there, right? So I'm going to use parentheses, times 75, and that's equal to, now I got to multiply on the other side, 75 times x. So this is going to be 75 times x. So now we're going to simplify. So 225 times 75 gives you what? Good job. So good catch there. So here I want to, rather than multiplying times 75, you're right, I need to multiply times 100. Sorry about that. Good catch. So that's going to be 225 times 100. Beautiful. So now 225 times 100 is 22,500. Very good. And then that's going to be equal to 75 times x. But we don't know what x is, right? How do I figure out what x is? Let's just do a little sidebar here. If I had 3 times something equals 6, how do I know what that is? You're going to divide by, you're going to divide by 3 to get you what the question mark is, right? So 6 divided by 3 is equal to 2. So that's how we know that is equal to 2, because we divided by the other number, right? So here, if I want to figure out what we're multiplying here, what do you think I'm going to do? Divide by the 75, right? So we're going to divide by the 75 here, and we're going to divide by 75 there. So here, 75 divided by 75 is equal to what? 1. So here, this is equal to 1. So what's 1 times x? What's 1 times 2? 2. What's 1 times 8? 8. What's 1 times 17? What's 1 times 85? 85. So what do you think 1 times x is? X. Because anything times 1 is itself, right? So 1 times x is equal to x. Does everybody see how I got the x by itself? And now we have 22,500 divided by 75. That would be 300. Very good. So this is our final answer. So 225 is 75% of 300. So here we have 75 is, these are the goddess, 75 is 15% of what number? Now, I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to ask you, well, maybe I'll ask you to do a number line. But these, we're going to do these by calculating. Okay? So we can change the 15% to a fraction, right? So we're going to write our percent proportion. So 15% becomes 15 over 100. The is number is the part. Here's the is number. See, 75 is. And that goes where? In the numerator. So this goes, 75 goes in the numerator. And the of what number is the whole. And where does that go? In the denominator. Very good. So that is what we're solving for our x down there. Now, rather than doing cross multiplying on this one, can I just say, how can I get from 15 to 75? Times 5. Very good. And if I multiply times 5, does everybody notice that I use the dot here and not the x? Because I have an x right here, right? So if I multiply times 5 up there, I have to multiply times 5 down here. So 100 times 5 is 500. So x is equal to 500. Is everybody with me? Good. So let's do letter E using cross multiplication. Okay? So we want to set up our proportion. Percent over 100 equals the part over the whole. And remember, the part is the is number, and the whole is the of number. So the first thing we're going to get is our percent. So that is 36 over 100, right? Percent over 100, right? Equals the is number, which is 9. So that's going to go in the numerator. And the of number is what we're solving for, and that's going to be our x. Very good. That's the whole. So let's solve this by cross multiplying. So on one side we have 9 times 100, which is 900, equals 36 times x. Now, how do I get that x by itself? We're going to divide by 36. You're going to divide by whatever's in front of the x, okay? So that's going to be 36. So now 36 divided by 36 is 1, right? So that's going to be 1 times x, which is equal to x. And what's 900 divided by 36? So x is equal to 25. Okay, so for letter F, that says 7 is 70% of what number? So here, let's set up our percent proportion again. So we have the percent, and we're going to write that over 100. So that's going to be 70 over 100 is equal to the is number, or the part. So the part is 7. So that's going to be 7 over the of number, which is what we're solving for. So that's going to be our x. Okay? So now we can either cross multiply, like we did in example E, or we can do some scaling. Okay? So here, let's do the scaling version for this one, and then we'll cross multiply for example G. All right. So here we've got 70, and we want to get to 7. So here we want to do, actually, I think this would, yeah, that's good. So we're going to divide 70, we're going to scale back by dividing by 10. And 70 divided by 10 gives me 7. So now I want to divide in the denominator also by 10. So 100 divided by 10 gives me 10. So 7 is 70% of 10. So x is equal to 10. All right, so for example G, we're going to do this one by cross multiplying. Okay, so we will set up our percent proportion. So that's the 35% goes over 100. So that's going to be 35 over 100. And that's equal to the is number, which is 7 again. So that's the part, over the of number, which is what we're solving for. And that's going to be our x. So now when we cross multiply, on one side we have 7 times 100, which is 700. And that's going to be equal to, cross multiplying on the other side, 35 times x. So that's going to be 35 times x. Now, to get that x by itself, we're going to divide by the number that's in front of the x. So we're going to divide by 35 here. And if I divide by 35 on one side of my equal sign, I have to do the same on the other. So now you can see that 35 divided by 35, that's going to be equal to 1. So 1 times x is equal to x. And 700 divided by 35 gives me 20. So x is equal to 20. So 7 is 35% of 20. So for the example 5, it says before 1982, pennies were 95% zinc and 5% copper. If 100 pennies minted in 1980 have an approximate mass of 15 grams of copper, what is the total mass of the 100 pennies? So here we want to know, let's see. So we want to know our question, let's see, we've got 15 grams of copper, 15 grams of copper, and 5% copper, and we want to know what is the total mass. So that is our of number. So we want to know 15 is 5% of what number? So you can see that you can simplify a word problem just by writing your what number is question. So 15 is 5% of what number? So now you can see that your percent, of course, is 5%. So that's 5 over 100. The part is the 15. So that goes in the numerator. And the of what number, that's our whole that we're solving for. And that's our gray box here. So, in order for us to go from, let's see, from 5 to 15, we're going to multiply times 3. So that means that we need to multiply times 3 in the denominator too. So 100 times 3 is equal to 300. So the total mass of 100 pennies is 300 grams.